Shawnette, I think when you're ready, take it away.
All right, wonderful. So good evening, everyone. My name is Shawnette Strickland, a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and I am thankful and grateful for the endorsement of the Matriots in 2019. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority and the Matriots have so many things in common, such as a commitment to making women's voice heard in our political environment. Both are nonpartisan, and you better believe both are leading the way in social action. We truly believe women lead from the front and creating a space so all can thrive and prosper. Welcome. Thank you for attending our very first The Power of the Vote, Navigating the Ballot Box in the Pandemic. This is part 1 of a part 2 series. We have some fantastic movers, shakers, change agent women who you will be hearing from this evening. First, I would like to introduce Natasha Mitchell, a devout public service and a human resource professional, is an emerging leader in Cincinnati. She's developing her knowledge across many sectors, specifically in local and state government. Her contribution to dialogue on issues such as trauma, poverty, community policing, affordable housing, and economic stability are helping shift the narrative of what it means to proactively move towards action that will produce thriving families. One of her short-term goals is to serve as a bridge between her local government and the community, ensuring oversight, adequate representation, and being a change agent to eliminate intentional barriers that families face. She believes that having more women in roles of leadership and decision-making is a crucial component in defending and advancing democratic, given the positive economic impactment women possess. She understands that participation is representation and seeks to one day fulfill her long-term goal and become United States of America Congresswoman. Please welcome Natasha.
Thank you, Ms. Shawnette. That was a wonderful introduction. I really appreciate that. Hello, everyone. My name is Natasha Mitchell, and I'm a member of the Matriarchs PAC in Cincinnati, where I have also taken on a lead volunteer role as a Queen Bee. And as a Queen Bee, I simply encourage others to support the Matriarchs PAC by becoming a member and helping to spread the word about why it's important for women of all backgrounds and experiences to show up where decisions that affect our daily lives are being made. We call that building the hive. I first became interested in the matriarchs as I started to understand myself more deeply in my own personal passion for service. I'm an AmeriCorps alumni. I also attended the New Politics Leadership Academy. I am a member of our inaugural class of City Council School here in Cincinnati, which began earlier this month and is keeping me very, very busy. I serve on my Community Council Board and Hamilton County's Community Development Advisory Committee. I'm also chairperson for my community's business district and grants and fundraising committee. I know for a fact as I show up in these spaces that there are not enough women running for office, and surely not enough women like myself. So to contribute to that solution, I have decided to go all in and run for the Cincinnati City Council election 2021. I'm grateful for all on this call tonight who have already taken that step and who are running for office as well as serving in office. Know that you are a great inspiration to those who hope to follow, including myself. You are also a great inspiration to members of the Matriarchs PAC who total nearly 1,700 men and women from across the state of Ohio who believe in our mission to elect more women to Ohio offices who will create an economy in which women can thrive and prosper. When women prosper, we all prosper, right? Did you know women hold only 29% of elected office in Ohio, even though we are 51% of the population? the chief consumers and lead caregivers of our family. Does that sound like qualities to lead? Well, I think so. And the Matriarchs PAC is on its way to fix that. Our bold goal is 50% representation in Ohio offices by 2028. We are a nonpartisan, and we have endorsed candidates who are Democrats, Republicans, as well as independents, Greens, and Libertarians. You may be focused on the sensation of presidential politics, but the Matriarchs knows that it is state and local offices that affect our day-to-day lives. We're focused on the school board, county races, the state house, and state Supreme Court to truly change this state for the better. Our PAC is just 3 years old, but already we have 64 women in office in our first two general elections. That was in 2018 and 2019. That is a 59% win rate. Two of our winners are council members Shanette Strickland and Meredith Lawson Rowe, who partner with us tonight to put Matriots and the Deltas into a shared conversation. Today, with just 14 days to go, I believe it may be 13, to go to the November 3rd election, we have a slate of 64 female candidates that we have invested our members' money into. Several of them are on the panel tonight, and in addition to writing checks to their campaign, we are helping them build power and influence, in part by introducing them to voters and donors during events just like this one tonight. The Matriarchs the Matriarchs know that when women lead, Ohio prospers. If you'd like to learn more about us, become a Queen Bee with me, or just a simple member, please visit matriarchsohio.com or private message me in the chat so we can talk further at the conclusion of tonight's event. Now, before I introduce the next speaker, I just want to take one quick moment to acknowledge one of our founders. She's here with us on a call, Miss Sally Crane Cox. She and her 5 friends created Matriarchs PAC 3 years ago, and we're pleased to have her on a call tonight. Ms. Cox, you want to add anything really quickly?
Well, I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much. I'm really thrilled to be here. And T and I have worked together a long time on women's issues and trying to elevate especially girls and help them to be better citizens. And so this is sort of a natural evolution of this process. Anyway, thank you so much for allowing me to join you, and I look forward to the conversation.
Absolutely, thank you. Okay, so now we get into it, and I have the pleasure to introduce Ms. Deborah Pickens. Ms. Deborah Pickens began her life commitment in Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated in 1996 with the Columbus, Ohio Alumni Chapter. She remained active through various professional career transitions and consequently has also been a member of the Detroit Alumni Chapter. In the greater Cleveland Alumni Chapter during her journey in Delta. Deborah currently serves as president of the Columbus, Ohio Alumni Chapter and leads a membership of over 300 members. She is also a certified membership intake trainer as well as a Delta internal development trainer. She was honored with the distinction of Soarer of the Year for the 2015 and 2016 sorority year by the Columbus Alumni Chapter. She is a past member of National Charitable Partnership Task Force, past member of National Corporate Partnership Task Force, past Midwest Region Finance Manager and Special Projects Coordinator, and past Financial Secretary and Treasury of the Columbus Alumni Chapter. That's a mouthful, sounds like a very busy woman. Ms. Pickens is a retired employee of Eaton, a $20 billion power management company with regional headquarters in Cleveland, Ohio. Ms. Pickens is an active member of our Oakley Full Gospel Baptist Church. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Franklin University, a Master of Business Administration degree from the Ohio State University, and a Master's of Arts degree in Psychology with a diversity specialization from Cleveland State University. She is a certified diversity professional and holds certification from the Institute of Supply Management as a certified purchasing manager. Deborah resides with her husband, Henry, in Powell, Ohio. Ladies, let's welcome Miss Deborah.
Thank you. I was not aware you were going to read my whole bio. I'm like, who is that woman and how she get that done? Thank you, Ms. Mitchell, and I'm speaking success into your election. I look forward to calling you Councilwoman.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I have the pleasure of sharing with you a little bit about Delta Sigma Theta sorority, and to introduce our fabulous, amazing moderator, Tei Street. There are two of my favorite subjects. I'm going to try to stay on task and do it in the few minutes that they gave me. But Delta Sigma Theta, we are a private, not-for-profit organization with over 900 chapters throughout the world. We are committed to public service. We're focused primarily on the Black community. We're committed to serving our community under the sorority's 5-point programmatic thrust, but specifically related to this workshop is political awareness and involvement. I want to call her Sora, but Ms. Deidre Reese is on the call. She has co-chaired Social Action. Shirley Freeman is on the call. She's my current co-chair of Social Action, and I'm probably missing my other co-chair, Gwendolyn Woods, somewhere on the call. She's just not on my screen. But I want to give a special thank you to the Social Action Committee and the matriarchs for really bringing together this partnership. I'm looking forward to a powerful, powerful workshop. We are 355 members strong now, and I see some of our newest members on the call working already, so I appreciate them. Under the political awareness and involvement thrust, we do voter education, voter registration, as well as advocating for policy changes. The ladies of Delta are everywhere. We're in every field, from education to business management to public administration to the judiciary, law, engineering. My background is supply chain. We are everywhere. You will always see us working, and you will always see us serving. Some of our most distinguished Deltas that are recognized nationally are really right here from Ohio. Congresswoman Marcia Fudge, which is a part of the Cleveland, Greater Cleveland Alumni Chapter, and then Joyce Beatty, the Honorable Joyce Beatty out of Columbus. She's actually a member, I like to say active and financial member of the chapter here in Columbus. A key statistic I want to share with you as it relates to this workshop is that 97% of Deltas throughout the world are registered to vote. So we believe in power in our voice, and there's definitely power in our vote. We know that Black women are at the polls on record numbers, so power in our voice. So speaking of power in our voice, let me introduce you to our moderator, the amazing Tei Street. And I just really enjoy working with Miss Street because she always drives us to be amazing too. I like that little tagline that she has. But the amazing Tei Street is founder of Street Talk with the amazing Tei Street. Street Talk is a national motivational speaking, training, and education consulting company. So you can see she is busy as well. She's amassed a wealth of experience in higher education, curricular development, training in sexual assault prevention, domestic violence prevention and advocacy, and education and youth leadership development. She is using her skills. And she's received a multitude of rewards and recognitions. If I started to read them all, we wouldn't have time for the panel discussion. She has received many, many accolades. But most important, Tei is also involved in our chapter. And she serves as co-chair of Embody, which is our mentoring program for young men. She has done an excellent job. Under her leadership, the program has won a national award from Delta's National Program and Planning and Development Committee. So did I say that there's 900 chapters? I want to make sure you understand the significance of it. 1 out of over 900 chapters, and the Embodied program won that a national award. So she is an amazing woman. So I present to you the amazing Tei Street, one of the most sought after youth speakers in the country, and our moderator this evening. Thank you, Tei Street. I want to call you Soar, Tei Street, for sharing with us today.
Wow. First of all, I didn't know my president was introducing me. So now I get to sit up straight because my president introduced me. Thank you so much. President Deborah Pickens, president of the Columbus Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I'm grateful tonight to the Matriots for partnering with Delta Sigma Theta. What the Matriots and Delta have in common, as Shanette, the Honorable Shanette Strickland has already said, are many things, but what we are deeply passionate about, as are the guests on the panels tonight, is the advocacy of women in the civic and voting arena. Some folks don't know that the reason that it's appropriate that Delta would partner with the Matriots tonight is because in 1913, when women were marching for the vote, and let us be clear that the vast majority of those folks who were a part of the suffrage movement didn't look like the women of Delta Sigma Theta. But just 2 months after the founding of the organization at Howard University, 22 college women left the campus needing a male escort to join them. And they showed up at the suffrage march. They were told that they would have to march in the back. So I want us to be clear that it matters what type of women are coming to the ballot. I believe, as the Matriots do, that when women lead, Ohio prospers. I believe that when women lead, the nation prospers. But it matters what type of woman, which is why I love that the Matriots go across the board and really advocating for the election of women, not based on party, but based on principles. Because what we know is that there are some women who are nothing more than patriarchy and drag. And so what we are clear is that the Matriots are all about selecting folks who will advocate for what is best for women, which we know is best for the nation. I'm excited to be here as your moderator tonight. I get to introduce both of the panels, which makes me super excited. Tonight, I'm really excited. I've been in COVID mode, and most people have gone through this, ebb and flow of depression. I haven't had that. I love being by myself, so this has been like a gift. I would be remiss because my mother told me you always have to do housekeeping. One of the founding board members of the Matriots happens to be my boss, and she's on tonight too. And so I want to keep my job. So I want to make sure that I don't forget to shout out my boss, Trudy Bartley, who's on the call tonight as well. So see, I took care of business. One of the greatest lessons that I've learned in COVID, in watching women move, I've watched women in elected office move with just the strategy and the culture, because what we know is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I've watched women be very deliberate in the kinds of moves that they're making and advocating for the families who are struggling during this pandemic and during what I consider to be multiple pandemics on multiple fronts. But what I've learned about us as women is that when we collectively come together, women are indestructible forces of fortitude. And they use their intellect and strength to really become slayers of dragons. And so tonight I want to introduce 2 dragon slayers in making sure that women are getting to the polls, and not just women, but that we're showing up in mass, that people are showing up to vote. 2 organizations who have been at the forefront include the League of Women Voters. And so I'm going to introduce their executive director, Jen Miller, in a second, but also Unity Ohio, which I'm excited to shout out tonight because my soror and friend Deidre Reese is the leader of that organization. So here we go. As we talk about leadership, and leadership does matter, Jen Miller is the executive director of the League of Women Voters. She was raised in small town Ohio. And people don't know that there are so many small towns in the state of Ohio. There are 33 Appalachian counties out of 88 in the state of Ohio. Jen comes to the League from the Sierra Club, where she served in various capacities since 2008, most recently as executive director. For nearly 20 years, Jen has worked with diverse communities to promote social and environmental justice through positions with Columbus Rec and Parks, the King Arts Complex, Global Gallery, and The Ohio State University. Jen Miller earned her master's in arts policy, education, and administration, a program of the John Glenn School of Public Affairs at Ohio State. She holds bachelor's degrees in vocal music and history and ethnic studies from Capital University. She is a graduate of the U.S. Department of Energy's NREL Leadership Academy. She believes in inspiring others to participate in civic engagement, and that is her deepest passion. She is a jazz singer, well, all right now, and a proud mother of one daughter. Like my president, I'm not going to read my friend Deidre's whole bio because Deidre has been in the game for over 30 years and she's got a bio around public service and advocacy that would blow your mind. But she has a long history of advocacy and service and has a passion for community empowerment. She has community and public policy experience, including nearly 8 years as a legislative aide in the Ohio House and the Ohio Senate. She has 10 years as a lobbyist and director of governmental services with a statewide labor organization, as well as executive roles for several nonprofit organizations that empower women. Deidre has a strong interest in civil rights, fairness, and justice, and has successfully woven her professional and personal passions to give voice to people who are often marginalized. She believes, and I love this, Deidre, in creating community-based power through the E philosophy: education plus engagement equals empowerment. In her more than 30 years of working professionally in the public policy and advocacy arena, she has fostered and maintained relationships with many community groups, as well as leaders, elected and elected officials at the local, state, and national levels. She's a native of Columbus, Ohio. She holds a bachelor's degree in sociology and anthropology and a master's degree in public policy. Deidre Reese is also a certified organizational development consultant and holds other professional licenses. I'm going to give these ladies an opportunity to talk to you tonight, but before I do, I want to pop in and ask Shiloh if she'll do a poll for me. We want to know what folks who are here think. So this is your opportunity to participate. So Shiloh, will you jump in and share the poll with our audience, please?
You know what? That poll that was working when we logged on together has now disappeared. So we're going to have to follow up with that one in email.
So here's what I want you to do. Put it in the chat for me and I'll read them at some point all throughout. The question is, in terms of getting out to vote, how are you already civically and actively engaged? What are you already doing? Put it in the chat. What are you doing to make sure that we all turn out for the vote? All right, so let's get started. I'm going to start out by asking, I'm not going to ask you all to repeat your bio. I'm going to ask you, what if you could only have one thing that you wanted every single person on Facebook Live and on this call to do in the next 13 days? Jen and then Deidre, what would that be?
Well, of course it would be vote. I don't think that's too hard. We want everyone to vote. But I would say my second would be, I want everyone to advocate. You know, I want to make sure that everyone on here is checking in on other voters. Clearly, we are like-minded folks and that we're going to make sure we get to the polls. We have done a lot of focus groups, especially with young people. And, you know, in new Americans too. And one of the things we find is that when people don't vote, it's because they find the process confusing and intimidating. So I want everyone to not just vote, but I want them to be checking in on their loved ones and making sure that they have what they need to succeed as voters as well.
I would say understand the power of the vote. I think that's the disconnect that a lot of people have and why some people tend to disengage from voting. They don't understand the true value of that vote. And when they look around and see so many different efforts to minimize the opportunities to vote and create those barriers, recognize the actual power of your own vote. And maybe that will motivate you to go ahead and get in the game and recognize it's the beginning of your power, not the end the beginning of your power and use that to just keep pushing forward to make change for your community.
I love that. Get out to vote, do the research, and recognize the power in your vote. We all talk about what that means, but I don't think that people always get that one vote. And when you look across the last election, you see the last presidential election, you see how small the margin was in some places. And so that one vote does matter. Can you all just spend a little bit of time? There are people, we always assume that everyone knows the same information. Tell us a little bit about the difference between early voting, absentee voting, and mail-in voting.
Yeah, okay, so I'll jump in. Deidre, go ahead and help me where you want. The great news about Ohio is that we have 3 different ways to vote, right? So you can vote absentee, which is also sometimes called voting by mail. You can vote early at the one early vote center in your county, or you can wait and vote on election day at the polling location in your neighborhood. Here's the thing, we want everyone to make a plan. So we want you to look at the pros and cons of those 3 ways of voting, then understand the logistics, because the logistics are slightly different for each, and then follow through with that plan. One of the things that's happening this year is a lot of people are rethinking how they vote. They might not want to wait till election day. They might decide they want to vote absentee. Even in terms of early voting or waiting and voting on election day, there's also curbside, an opportunity that if you are concerned about COVID-19 or you have mobility challenges, you can also vote curbside. So one thing I'll just mention is that absentee voting and voting by mail are basically the same thing, but there is one slight difference. In Ohio, we have absentee, no excuse absentee, which means you can decide to vote that way. You don't have to have some sort of proof that you need it, but you have to request your ballot and then you have to return your ballot. In vote by mail states, everyone's getting that ballot. And so if you are wanting to vote absentee, time is running out. You need to make sure right now that you are requesting your ballot, which you have to do on a paper document. You can't do it online. And so regardless though, you can vote early, and I would encourage you to do that sooner rather than later as well. We are seeing lines across the state, which is awesome in many ways. It means that participation and passion are at a high, but it also means that doing so early in the early vote cycle is a great idea. You have until November 2nd to go to your early vote center. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to my dear friend Deidre to elaborate.
Right. If you're going to vote by mail, I would just encourage you, make certain that you read all of the directions. You know, we're all very smart people, but something really, really minor can get your ballot tossed and not counted. So we want to make certain that, you know, if you are engaging and you are going to cast your ballot, that you read every single thing and you fill out both of those envelopes correctly. You put everything in the right envelope and you mail it in, because we don't want your vote to not count. And then also, if you're going to go in person, whether it's during the early vote time or on election day, plan for everything to go wrong. The traffic lights are not working. Your kid has got sick in the back seat of the car. You got to pick up mom, whatever the case may be. The parking lots are full. You want to make certain that you plan for something to not go right, so that you have time to get in line on time, you know, bring a snack, some water, whatever it is that you need, because the lines are long, which is great, like Jen said, but you want to make certain that you have what you need so that you don't have to leave and not be able to actually cast your ballot. So just make that whole full and complete plan, you know, with those eventualities for something to not go exactly as you want it to go. But if it's short, get on in there and get out and pick up somebody else and make certain that they can get there. And you also have the opportunity, even at the early vote center, there are drop boxes so that you can drop your ballot in. So even if you want to go later in the day when the lines aren't long for the drop boxes, they are monitored 24 hours. So you don't have to worry about it being insecure there.
So we had a question in the chat that said, many people think that the single vote does not make a difference. How do you help people understand that it does? Deidre,
I love this question. So I'm going to actually go back to, and I know that we commemorate the 19th Amendment. We don't celebrate it because not all women had equal access after the 19th Amendment was passed in 1920. But let's be clear that when the 19th Amendment passed, women often were in forced marriages, child marriages, were not able to divorce. If they earned money outside of the household, that went to their husband. They didn't have any control over it. There were so many issues like this for women, and those immediately started to change as we started to expand the populace for women. We can look similarly to, when the 15th Amendment passed, and we had African-American men in the South voting in great numbers. And we had the federal government protecting those voters when they were registering and at the polls until 1877, when the federal government pulled those folks. And at that time, we had Black men, when the government pulled that support, we had Black men serving in Congress. We didn't have Black men serving in Congress again for a century until the Voting Rights Act was passed. And at that point, we also then had Black women representing Congress. And that had all kinds of reverberations from, the kinds of education that children got, school funding, even just the fact that jury pools in the South were coming from voter rolls. The jury pools in the South during Jim Crow era, 3% of African Americans in the South were registered to vote. The jury pools were almost entirely white. And so in every different way we can point to history, right? So first, the 19th Amendment, women immediately started to see more economic power, more political power. We started to see funding for education, clean water, parks, the end of child labor, improvement to labor laws for women. And then the same with after the VRA, we again see a more responsive government once we are sure, or we are doing not sure, but we're doing a better job protecting the rights of people of color. And so if it weren't so precious, it wouldn't have been so hard of a fight. And that's why we need to make sure we're exercising it every chance we get, every election, in not just the top of the ticket, all the way down the ballot.
Absolutely. And I would just add to that, and T, I think you were asking the question, if someone's saying, why does my one vote matter? We've seen races, and again, not at the top of the ticket necessarily, but all the way down the ballot that are decided literally by just a few votes. And I often argue to people, start voting at the bottom of the ballot, because those are typically the ones that are closest to you, right? The decisions that are made by your city council, by your school boards. Those are, your county commissioners, those decisions you are going to be feeling more directly than what a presidential candidate and what their platform is. It's going to hit you faster. So if we start there, but those are often smaller margins. So your vote may actually even have more power. It might be a spread of 50 votes in a community of 500. For example, there are districts that are very, very small, and maybe there are only 75 people who are voting in a district. So you can have tremendous impact. So it really matters that you actually have a say in what decisions are being made. And if we go back to the 2016 election, and I'll use Wayne County in Michigan as an example, you had such a small margin in that entire state that made a difference in terms of who won that whole state. You look at the population and the number of people who chose not to participate. Had they participated, it could have swayed who actually won that state. And I'm not saying who should have won and who should not have, but just the lack of people participating from 2012 to 2016 turned the difference of who actually did come out the victor in that particular state. And we've seen that happen across elections in general. And when we look at what is happening right now, when I looked earlier today, 42 million people had already cast their ballots, which is just unheard of, right? In presidential election. And we're seeing that it's just record breaking. It's really going to be different. That's why everybody is still saying, we really don't know who's going to win and who's not going to win. And everybody's talking about the presidential election, but we look at the Senate and even, one vote. Look at the decisions that the Supreme Court is going to be making on so many different issues. Yeah, one vote really makes a big difference in whether it's a decision at a high level or it's a decision that is happening in your local community. You have tremendous impact of who is going to determine the future and how it impacts your own family or even you as an individual. It's critical.
It's exciting reading what some of the folks are posted in the chat that they're already doing. They're giving rise to the polls. They're part of organizations that are getting folks ready to vote and making sure that people have a plan to vote and showing up and doing caravans and parades and all of those things that we need. I want to make sure that we have enough time to get a couple of questions in if you have them. But one of the things I would ask you all, what are you hearing from Washington? What are the most and latest confusing disinformation that is out there that we should all be aware of as relates to voting rights? I don't want to talk about candidates, I want to talk about voting rights.
Thank you for that. It's not just Washington, right? So there are reports that in a South Side neighborhood a week ago, some well-dressed gentlemen were knocking on doors and spreading misinformation about the rights of people who have criminal records. That's probably one of the most misunderstood things, that in Ohio, the only people who cannot vote are those who are actively serving time at that moment for a felony. Once someone's done serving that time, they're waiting trial, they're in jail for a misdemeanor, all of those times they can vote. We also have a lot of, we are on the watch for all kinds of other misinformation. If you remember Congressional District 12, when we had our special election, some people were getting texts in August 2018 that their polling location had moved, though it hadn't. One of the things that I'll just say to all of you is that I want you to make sure you have at the ready the election protection hotline. That nonpartisan election protection hotline is literally how I'm spending every minute of my day right now, is what's coming in from voters and from poll workers so that we see what's going on. And that can include calling that hotline if you see intimidation or if you see misinformation out there. So that hotline is 866-OUR-VOTE. That is a national hotline run by the Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights, along with the League, NAACP, so many others, Common Cause, All Voting is Local. And so there's a lot of different misconceptions out there, T, but I definitely think we should be making sure we understand that it's not just one place. It can be from government actors. It can be, I even see sometimes that someone will say every absentee ballot takes 2 stamps. That's not actually true. You need to read the instructions. Like as Deidre earlier said, you need to read the instructions to see how many stamps it takes. But I've even seen that repeated by my own League members who I consider elections experts. And so there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I'm just thrilled to have all of you as partners in trying to clarify the record.
Deidre, I would ask you, what are some of the things specifically, because we know that oftentimes those targets, because there's a fear that African Americans will show up to vote. What are some of the things that are specifically right now that you see that are targeted towards the African American community?
Oh, there are definitely people who are making threats that they are going to target primarily African American polling precincts. So we just have to be alert and aware. If you hear it, don't assume that it is a fake threat. Go ahead and alert the election protection hotline. There are people who are standing at the ready to be there with law enforcement if necessary. And a lot of the law enforcement organizations are coming together. We've got FBI that are looking into very credible threats, but also making certain that threats are credible or distinguishing between those that may not be. We're just in a time in a season that we know that there's just a lot of stuff that's going on. So we just want to be very vigilant about all of that. And, there have been phone calls that have gone out to folks, robocalls. There's, prosecution going on against people about that. Postcards have been mailed to some people. If you get it, see something, say something. We just gotta make certain that we combat it, and then be careful if you see something on social media in particular, because that stuff just has wings. Don't pass it on. Check the source. As Jen said, I kept telling people over and over again, please stop saying it takes 2 stamps. It was before we even knew what was going to be on the ballot. I'm like, for God's sake, don't say that. What if it's 3 stamps? You're just going to stop something from getting there, or if people don't have access to stamps. So it can seem very innocuous. We just want to make certain that we're passing on the correct information and not incorrect information. And another thing that I wish the national media was talking about, we do not have to have a decision on election night. States do not have to certify a winner until December the 8th, I believe it is. So this whole, conversation of, oh my God, I have to challenge it if I don't know on November the 3rd or even the 4th, then this is, you know, a travesty and it's all this other stuff, you know, check the record. The Constitution says we have until this particular time to actually certify. So people should not be worried that, you know, an election has been stolen or something is wrong when there actually is time to have an official certification of election results.
Okay, we're running short on time. So here's what I'm going to ask you, because one of the things I want to make sure is that you give them something to do. One of the things that we know is that there's a shortage of poll workers across the state of Ohio. So if you all are looking for something to do that will make a difference, many of you have been given the day off. If you work for the city of Columbus, you work for a school district, we're off that day. Being a poll worker can, in literally less than a minute, can you tell them how to sign up to become poll workers? Either one.
I actually have a different request. So I do have a plea for help. Right now we are recruiting social workers and clergy to de-escalate at the polls, understanding that calling the cops does not necessarily make voters feel more comfortable. I also need lawyers for the Election Protection Coalition. I need poll monitors. I need all kinds of folks. And so I'm going to ask for that. There are a lot of poll workers. A lot of counties are reaching what they need, but you should call your Board of Elections and see if they still need poll workers. Sorry.
Hey, Jen, can you drop your information though in the chat? Telling them to contact you doesn't do us any good if you don't tell them how to reach you. So can you drop it in the chat? Deidre, is there anything, one last thing that you want to give them to do?
We are asking for poll monitors as well. So I will drop the information in the chat, ready.vote with the Ohio Unity Coalition, but I will drop it in the chat. Same request.
Thank you. Can you all join me in thanking, and both of them, by the way, are super busy. This is their busy season. There's 13 days to the election. This is their super busy season, and yet they said yes to the request to come on this panel. So I want to thank Jen Miller from the League of Women Voters. I want to thank Deidre Reese from Unity Ohio. Thank you both for your work. Thank you both for your service. And thank you for your advocacy to make sure that the vote isn't stolen from us.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Right. So we're going to let them, after they put their information in, I know that Jen has to drop off. And so Jen, we thank you again for coming on. We're going to give me about 2 minutes. I think we're going to transition and try to pin our next panelists who are coming on for the second panel. All right. So while Jen is going off and Shiloh is trying to pin our candidates who are coming on, I want to shout out my sorors of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I hope our newest members heard my subtle and gentle nod to them, and I hope y'all appreciated the subtlety of it all. But anyway, I did want to make sure that I shout out. I want to shout out all the members of the Matriots who, and by the way, I am also a member of the Matriots, and so I'm wearing, because someone sent me a text and said, why do you have on an orange shirt instead of red tee? Because I'm repping both organizations. I have my Delta blazer on and I have my orange shirt on representing the color, one of the colors of the Matriots. So there you go. That's why. So don't text me again. No, I'm just joking. So that's the explanation. But I wanted to make sure that I shouted out both of the organizations who had the foresight. It's not often that we bring women's organizations together. And the more we do this, the more we debunk the myth that women can't get along, the more we understand our collective power. And so it's super important that we do this. Shiloh, are all of the candidates on yet? Yay, I need to see them on the screen. Can you pin them?
As they talk, they will be pinned.
They'll pop up.
Depending on the way that you have your screen set up, you can do speaker view, but that is who Facebook is following, is whomever is talking. So yes.
That's awesome. Thank you. I just put it on speaker view. I just like to see everybody's because I'm nosy. So we're going to get started with our next panel. I'm really excited to have some of the next guests. We're going to let them introduce themselves because we thought that they had a lot more passion in telling you who they are and what they represent. I do, before I do this section, just to make sure that people understand that both the Matriots and Delta Sigma Theta are nonpartisan organizations. And though these candidates may be running on a particular party's ticket, that is not an endorsement of either of these organizations, except the Matriots. All of the women, I think, who are coming on have been endorsed by the Matriots because they do endorse across parties. But Delta Sigma Theta is a nonpartisan organization, and our participation in this part of the panel does not signify an endorsement on the part of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I wanted to make sure that I got that in so that we are clear and so that folks who are watching understand. All right, are we ready?
If I may, T, I'll just say that we are, save for the Ohio Supreme Court, we are not yet in other judge races. So we are very proud to have Magistrate Stroud as a member, but we are not endorsing those races yet.
I appreciate that. And I noticed that when I was reading all the information today on the website that 2 of the candidates are endorsed. And I said, oh, we must not be in the judging area either. But I'm super excited to have our magistrate on as well, who is running for juvenile and family court. So tonight we have 3 amazing candidates who are running. And so once they introduce themselves, I'm gonna ask them not to spend 15 minutes introducing themselves, because I want us to get into the meat of what they're running on and why they think we should be concerned about who they are. So I'm going to ask them to share a little bit about themselves, but then talk to us more as we get into the meat. If you have questions that you'd like to pose, please, by all means, let us know that you'd like to ask a question at some point near the end. We're actually going to open it up and I'm going to allow folks to ask verbal questions. But for right now, if you have questions as we go, please put it in the chat. Does that work? All right, so our 3 panelists tonight who are coming on, who are all running for office, Crystal Lett. I was super excited, Crystal. I'm gonna let you introduce yourself, but I was reading all about you today and I got all excited to see all that you do. And I'm like, wow, she looks like 15 and she's doing all of this stuff. I know that you're not, but you do look 15. And then we also have our current, she's a magistrate, but I'm speaking things that aren't as though they are, our future juvenile court judge, but right now she's a magistrate, Lasheyl Stroud. And then we have representing the House of Representatives, we have Erica Crawley, and I'm super excited. These women are fire. So we're gonna let them introduce themselves. I'll start with Crystal and then I'll go to Erica and then I'll go to Lasheyl.
Ooh, hello, Matriots. This is like one of my favorite groups of women to be with of all times. And, you know, I'm getting a little nostalgic. We're getting towards the end of the campaign and I just appreciate you all and the work that you do to help women get elected. You are epically important and especially in this pivotal year for Ohio politics. So again, my name is Crystal Lett and I am running in Senate District 16, which is essentially Western Franklin County. So it's Dublin, Worthington, Upper Arlington, Hilliard, Grove City, and then Columbus, like the beach-walled area of Clintonville kind of runs down the side there. So it's a very large district. I am born and raised in that district. I went to Hilliard-Davidson High School and then graduated from The Ohio State University with my degree in political science. And really after school, after college, I started working in community mental health. And I worked with 14 to 21-year-olds who had very, very severe and symptomatic mental health disorders. And that's really where I learned how to be a fighter and an advocate for people who needed help. And I did that direct care position up until I had my first son, who's 9 now. And he was born with a very, very rare genetic disorder. So I essentially became a case manager for my own child from my living room instead of for other people's children from my office. So it was a very big paradigm shift for me as a woman, as a professional, as a mom, and for our family at large. It was very economically difficult. And really for me, as my son got more medically stable, I started working on legislative issues that I had identified both as a professional in mental health and then as a mom of a child with special needs. So I worked for about 7 months with Senator Sherrod Brown to renew CHIP, the Children's Health Insurance Program. And that work was just, you know, very pivotal to me, very, very wonderful work. And we were able to save healthcare for 209,000 families here in Ohio. So just really awesome experience. And, you know, once I finished that, I was like, well, I need more of that. That was wonderful. I loved serving the community in that way. And so I work now, I manage a psychological practice. We have 9 different offices around Ohio. And when I'm not working, I am helping advocate for Save the Children, the large NGO. We do a lot of work in the US on affordable childcare and early childhood education policy. And I do a lot of work with the Women's Public Policy Network on paid leave legislation. And really for me, the path to run for office began with 2 Matriots endorsed candidates from 2018, Representative Alison Brusso and Beth Liston, talked to me after helping out on their races and encouraged me to run. And so I am just here to say what you're doing is working. You are building a pipeline of women who want to run for office and who do. And so for me, I just want to bring my fight and all of the lessons that I've learned legislating and helping legislate over these years, and bring that to the State House and be a fighter for every single family here in Ohio. So thank you guys for having me again.
Representative Crawley.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone. Thank you to the Matriots and Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated for having me this evening. It's always a pleasure to be with the Matriots because they made a huge difference in my race when I was first running in 2018 against 3 men. And they endorsed my race early and supported me financially, where I was able to get my first mailer out. And so we'll forever be grateful. My name is Erica Crawley. I am a current state rep for Ohio's 26th House District, which is East and Southeast Columbus, a little bit of Reynoldsburg, Canal, Winchester, and Groveport. I am in my first term, ending that, running for my second. And I'll go to what I was doing before I came into the State House, because I think my past experience and life just really gave way to why I decided to come into the State House. So before running for office, it was something that I never thought I was going to do. I am an introvert by nature. And so like speaking and asking people to vote for me never crossed my mind. But in 2016, I was just like, I no longer wanted to just stand on the sidelines and complain about what was going on in government and not try to be part of the solution and just complaining about the problems. And so I felt like if anybody could run for office and really speak to some of the issues that I see in the 26th House District, it was me. And I say that I am the people that I advocate for. I have a career, or have made a career, really trying to break the preschool to prison pipeline. I have a bachelor's degree in criminology with a focus on juvenile delinquency. I have a master's in public administration, and I received my law degree from Capital University Law School. And most of the work that I did was around helping childcare centers get accredited on a national level. I worked with the YMCA Head Start, Early Head Start program as a partnership coordinator, working with families coming into the program, and then as a health coordinator, making sure our babies had their hearing and vision screenings and immunizations, and were really ready to transition to kindergarten when the time came. I say that I am a mother, an advocate, and a veteran. I have twin girls who are 16, Hope and Faith. They are my world. And, when it comes to being a mother in the legislature, I am the only single parent in the legislature, in the House and in the Senate, so out of 132 members. So I think my experience really gives way to bringing that perspective, even with my colleagues who might have school-age children. I think their life and their support is definitely different from mine. And when I look at the 26th House District and who's voting, it is women who are heading the household, and unfortunately and fortunately, they are single. And so, again, I am the people that I advocate for. And since I came into the legislature last year, I really have started working on maternal and infant health issues. And it's very personal to me. I had a very traumatic pregnancy, went into preterm labor at 18 weeks, spent 16 weeks in the hospital, and then had an emergency C-section, and then had some complications after, where when I went to the hospital, felt like a lot of women, unfortunately, who are dismissed and feel like they went into a healthcare system that didn't treat them fairly or equitably. I have also worked on veterans issues. I served active duty in the Navy from 2000 to 2003, also served as a veteran in Akron from 2007 to 2008. So already passed a law supporting veterans who have separated from the military and had a disability and saw their severance payment be taxed at the state level. Originally, it was taxed at the federal level. The federal government fixed that, but we were still taxing veterans and their severance payment at the state level. So all the way until December 31st, if you know a veteran from 1991 until present day who separated from the military, had their severance payment taxed at the state level, can apply for a refund. So that's still available. If you know anybody, tell them to do it. They can get money back in their pocket. I have also worked on legislation for K through 12 around testing. We know that our children are over tested and that a lot of teachers feel like they are teaching to the test, and they feel like they can't be creative in their teaching, and that they really don't have students who are engaged. They have anxiety around testing, even the third grade reading guarantee. I've heard so many stories from teachers who are like, I had a child who was just, really freaking out, or they soiled their clothes because, they understood the magnitude of a third grade reading guarantee. And that's not what we want our children to experience. We want them to love learning and be feel like they can be creative. And so really trying to do some work around that. And then I am a joint sponsor for Racism as a Public Health Crisis. I am unapologetic about who I am. I am a Black woman living in a state and in a country that doesn't value my Blackness or who I am as a woman. We all are often overlooked and undervalued, especially as a woman in government. And so, we look at redlining and the health outcomes that have contributed to, what we see in COVID-19, as well as education and not having a funding formula that has been constitutional, that has been unconstitutional for the past 26 years. We also know that when it comes to grant funding and who's getting awarded projects, that they typically do not come to people who own businesses that are minority-owned businesses or women-owned businesses, and the discrimination that happens there. So that's just a little bit of the work that I've been working on in the legislature, and I'm running again because I'm just getting started. There's a lot more work to do, and I think that I'm still the one that can represent the 26th House District and get that work done. So thank you.
Representative Crawley, there was a question in the chat asking you, when you said that you are in Canal Winchester, and they asked a question, is that in Franklin or Fairfield County?
Franklin County. So I have East and Southeast Franklin County. So the part of Canal Winchester right off of Gender and Bryce, I'm trying to think, it's kind of because gerrymandering, right? The very top part of Canal Winchester is what I have.
Oh, that's interesting. She just said, I don't see your name on my ballot, so you must be a representative in Franklin County. So yep, she answered that question for you, Ms. Gossett. All right, so next up is our very own Magistrate Lasheyl Stroud.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lasheyl Stroud. I currently serve as a lead magistrate in domestic relations and juvenile court. I am so excited to be here this evening with all of you. I'm a proud member of the Matriots and grateful for the opportunity to be here with this event with the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta, who I love dearly. I am from Columbus, Ohio. I have wanted to be a lawyer since I was 5 years old. It is the absolute only thing that I ever wanted to do growing up until I went to high school and met someone who was a judge, and actually the first person in my life that I met that looked like me, who was doing what I wanted to do. So representation, I can tell you firsthand, really is key. And it was at that point when I expanded my goals and said that one day I wanted to be a member of the judiciary. I went away to my HBCU, Kentucky State University, and then came back home and went to The Ohio State University for law school. Graduated 17 years ago, and I've been licensed and practicing law ever since then. Throughout my years of practice, I've had the opportunity to work in every area of domestic relations court, whether that's representing parents or children, serving as a court appointed or a CASA guardian ad litem, making sure that children have a voice in the courtroom without enduring the trauma of physically being present in the courtroom. I have handled civil and criminal matters, worked in the public and private sector, handled bench trials, jury trials, argued before the Court of Appeals, as well as the Ohio Supreme Court. And then 7 years ago, I was appointed to the bench to serve Franklin County County, presiding over abuse, neglect, dependency cases, delinquency cases, as well as our court's empowerment docket, which is for youth who are the victims of human trafficking, making sure that they have the necessary resources and support to flee that lifestyle. In addition to my professional career and now running for judge for the newly created seat in our court, I'm also a wife, a mother of 2 sons, a breast cancer survivor, very active in my community, serving, whether it's with my sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, or my church, New Covenant Believers Church. Just very passionate about our community and making sure that we all work together to combat the disparities that we see, especially in our court. So I'm just excited to be here and eager to be able to share as well as learn from all of the panelists and all of you women here this evening. So thank you. I am asking humbly for all of your vote and that all of Franklin County stands proud with Stroud and vote Stroud for judge. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, all 3 of you, for those amazing introductions. I've been a fan of Representative Crawley for a while. It's hard to believe that she's just finishing her first term because it seems like you've been here for so long because you've been doing so much good work for so long. And so thank you for the fight that you have. Here's what I want to start off in terms of asking the question. The Matriots believe that when women lead, Ohio prospers. But I specifically want to ask you, what kind of leadership should women have in light of the fact that many women on this call are facing 3 pandemics? They're facing the pandemic of COVID-19, they're facing the pandemic of racism, and they're facing the pandemic of disenfranchisement of women and people of color as a result of COVID-19. What kind of leadership should we expect from women, not just the 3 of you, but from women across the board in terms of how they approach and deal with those 3 pandemics? I will call on, let's start with Crystal. I'm going to ask you, and so what I won't let you do is what they do to the moderators on TV, which is bully them. I'm going to give everybody 2 minutes. So I'm going to start with Crystal. We're going to go in the same order that we went. So I'll start with Crystal, and then I'll go to Representative Crawley, and then I'll go to Lasheyl.
Love it. Yeah, I think, for me and I think for all of us as women, the best thing that we can do is lead by example. And that's exactly, what we're doing today. We're going to the voters without being actually able to go to them. And I think one of the things that's so important during this time and all of the things that we've been through in 2020 is that we meet people where we're at. That's what we've tried to do on the Lett campaign. We don't expect people to come to us in this time with all of these barriers that are going on, particularly for women trying to manage, homeschooling and working and running a household and all of the other things that have happened to us. I mean, it's just been a year. But I think leading by example, going to where the people are, even if it's via the internet, as we're doing tonight, I think it shows that we are invested in our communities, that we care about the people that we seek to serve, and that we will overcome barriers to get to them, and hopes that they can feel heard and feel the dignity and respect that they deserve as members of our community, and that we can hear their needs and get those needs communicated to the powers that be and make good legislation that represents them.
Okay, so I'm going to do a follow-up, and I know I didn't say that I would do that. I'm going to do a follow-up because you have a little bit of time left in your 2 minutes. My follow-up to you is, I heard Representative Crawley talk about being a sponsor of the Race is a Public Health issue in the state of Ohio. Were you elected to the Ohio Senate? Will you sign on as a supporter in the Senate, on the Senate side of Race is a Public Health issue, to support that bill?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's borderline traumatizing that there's any backlash whatsoever about declaring racism as a public health crisis. It's just so obvious to me that that's what needs to happen. Therefore, we can, collect the data we need without obstruction. We can create programs to address the real roots of these issues. And then we can, expand those programs to meet a larger amount of people and really hope to move the needle on this issue. But we can't do that unless and until we have the acknowledgement that systemic racism does exist, that it does affect people at a deep, deep level, and that it creates barriers for them to be able to achieve economic security, environmental security and safety. And I just think it's beyond disappointing that this wasn't a no-brainer and, you know, took half an hour to get it all the way through. So I will be there and I will be loud.
Thank you. Representative Crawley. Again, the question was centered around how, in terms of women leading and then Ohio prospering, what about the 3 simultaneous pandemics that women are facing right now?
Thank you so much for the question. I always say here lately that I don't need any more allies in this movement, and that means elected officials or people that are community leaders. What I need are people who are willing to be co-conspirators in the movement to dismantle systemic racism. And so because we see with COVID-19, especially, that just highlighted the problems that were already there. We've already been dealing with racism as an issue, especially for women and then women of color. We've been at the bottom of the totem pole, and now with COVID-19 being impacted by that virus at a disproportionate rate. So if people are not willing or interested to really talk about the issues and how they impact all of us as a community, whether you're a person of color or not, then I really don't have any time, and I won't be supportive of that type of leader, because I feel like that's someone who really isn't leading for all of us, but just for their own interest. And I have some colleagues in the legislature on both sides of the aisle who are like, you know, things don't really impact me, so I don't think it's a problem, or it isn't a problem, I haven't heard about it in our district. Then you really don't see how all of our communities are inextricably linked. And so when we operate in a place where everybody is working towards the same goal, then, you know, when one community prospers, we all prosper. And so I don't know that we need to do anything different for the people who are really leading to make a difference for all of us and all Ohioans. We just have to keep supporting each other, because we do get tired. It is exhausting sometimes. It is very overwhelming, and be able to say, I need support, or I'm tired. And so allow people in the community and our colleagues to support us in what we're really trying to do. So I don't know that we need to do anything different other than look for people who are really willing to be co-conspirators.
I love that term, co-conspirators versus ally. Thank you so much for that. Lasheyl.
Yes, so I totally agree with what has already been said. And the only thing that I have to add is really for us, as we are all working together to fight these pandemics that we find ourselves in, just to be hand in hand, one, to give each other grace for this space. I think that's important, especially for us as women, as we're working together to support each other, to know, just like Representative Crawley just said, that there will be points in this fight that we all need help and that we need the support of each other. So it's really standing arm in arm, linked up with each other, knowing that we truly are better together. When we all collaborate together, working in excellence in whatever our area of passion is, so that we can combat this together. Because everything that we're fighting, we really need to work together so that we can proceed and be victorious. So I believe that, you know, when women come together, there is nothing that we cannot do, which is why when women lead, we all prosper. So just to have grace in this space for each other, to extend grace and to be able to accept grace from each other, and then support each other as we move forward collectively.
So thank you so much for that answer. I love the collectivity answer, that when we work together, we are better together. If you have questions and you put them, if you raise your hand, I'm happy to call on you. If you want to put it in the chat, I'm happy to read it. But surely you have some questions for these dynamic women who, oh, I love this. Jasmine Green says, if elected, what are your 1 to 3 areas of focus? I'll take who.
You want us to go in order? Okay.
Simple.
Yeah, that's a great question. Although I will say, I'm sure between the 3 of us, we could literally fill up the next 4 hours with endless policy talk. So Yeah, we'll try and be real brief and informative. So for me, healthcare is obviously a huge issue. I have a son with a pre-existing condition who, really, he has a Medicaid waiver through the Department of Developmental Disabilities. And so protecting Medicaid expansion, making sure we're protecting people with pre-existing conditions in the middle of a global pandemic just seems very clear that should be a priority for us. I also am very passionate about protecting education, especially again in light of COVID-19 and all the challenges that has brought to schooling our kiddos. And so I think next year in the General Assembly, we're going to have to be very protective over the funding that is already there. We need more funding, and we need that funding to be equitable so every single child can receive an education, a quality education, regardless of their zip code. We also have to be very, very loud about the rights of our workers here in Ohio as we continue to deal with what is now the second wave of COVID. God knows what the rest of the winter is going to bring, but we need to make sure that our frontline workers are protected, that their rights are protected, that their bodies are protected, and that we just do a good job of protecting each other. So healthcare, education, workers' rights, making sure people are paid adequately and protected in their workspace are my top 3 priorities.
Awesome, thank you. Representative Crawley.
Thank you so much for the question. I think for me, I'll just continue to work on the things that I have introduced already. So some of you know that I am passionate around maternal and infant health. I have a number of bills that require more data, make it mandated, where we have to report on the direct and indirect causes of death. We will be putting together, or we have started putting together, we call it a momnibus that is mirrored off of the federal legislation. And we have really tailored that, or in the process of trying to tailor it to the state of Ohio, that deals with everything from maternal and infant mental health to drop-in child care centers to workforce development to get more people into healthcare fields and break down barriers that keep people out of the workforce. So going to continue to push the maternal and infant health. And then also I continue to say universal pre-K and all-day kindergarten. We know that that is a workforce development issue. It is a health and safety issue. It is an education issue. And we need that here in the state. And I'm not sure why we really don't have more of a focus on that. But then sometimes I'm like, I can understand given some of the people that I work with. But working towards that end, as well as making sure that we have a funding formula that works. We just don't have that, and we see where we have the disparities with schools, that some don't have what they need as far as resources. Some schools have air conditioning, others don't, some of our children are just being educated in not the most ideal situations for them to be able to thrive. And even if we put more money into the funding formula and have more money coming from the state to the locals, if we really don't take care of the infrastructure problem, a child really won't be able to learn in a hot, sweaty classroom. So really want to continue to work on education. And then I do have a bill that's called Water for All. And it prohibits water shutoffs. As we continue to say, COVID-19 just really highlighted the disparities around access to water and clean water. And so for women that are pregnant or even our aging population to have their services disconnected and not have something in place that helps them really be able to afford their water is very important to me. And so I think everyone should have access to water, clean, safe drinking water, and nobody should be subjected to having their water turned off. And then we know that that just steamrolls into other issues of being in a house that will be deemed to violate code and evictions. And we already see where we are with evictions, especially here in Central Ohio. So those are 3 things that I want to work on at the top of the General Assembly.
Thank you. We've got about 8 minutes left, and we've got a couple of questions. Lasheyl?
Yes, so 3 things that I'll say quickly. The first 2 are things that I do now currently as I serve on the bench as a magistrate. So 1, working towards justice for all and not just for some, making sure that justice is administered through a lens without any type of impartiality or bias. Second to that, continuing my personal judicial philosophy, and that is that every child who comes before me, I treat he or she as if that child is my own child. And I know that that has an impact on my decision making. Three, something that I will be able to do as judge. Yes, we preside over our own individual cases, but more importantly, the judges have a seat at the table when it comes to the policies and the direction of the specific court. So I would, if elected, work with the judges to make sure that we're doing things like combat racial disparities that we see in our court on any given day. What comes before us are 78% African American, and we know that is not reflective of our population. And then in our Juvenile Intervention Center, formerly known as Detention Center, on any given day, it's going to be a minimum of 90, sometimes 98% African American males. So I believe that we as the judges, it would be incumbent upon us to continue to do things like juvenile detention alternatives and work together to be able to combat those disparities.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask you these questions rapid fire. You can't give long extended answers because we're short on time. The question that was in the chat was, name one woman who inspired you.
Eleanor Roosevelt.
Thank you. Representative Crawley.
My great aunt, Marble Flint.
Thank you. Lasheyl.
There's so many. If I had to pick just one, I would say Judge Yvette McGee Brown, because that was the one person that I met in high school.
Awesome. Thank you. Mifflin High School grad. I just wanted to throw that out there. Judge Yvette McGee Brown. What are the areas you plan to address as relates to criminal justice reform in the state? So this question really is directed for Representative Crawley, and I'm going to ask both of you to be brief, and also for candidate Crystal Lett.
Thank you for that question. So I have two bills already, House Bill 706, which is requires de-escalation training, as well as training around cultural competency, mental health, and racism. It requires that police officers have no less than 40 hours of training just in that area. It also has an appropriation of $28 million. We don't have a line item appropriation from the state budget that goes to locals to support training. And then my other bill is House Bill 721. I have joint sponsored that with Representative Casey Weinstein, and that is demilitarizing of the police force. And it prohibits local law enforcement agencies from receiving property through the DOD 1033 program through the Department of Defense, because they are able to get free militarized equipment like drones, like helicopters, grenade launchers, and things like that for free. So it will prohibit that. And then I also want to look at, and I had a conversation with my good friend, Judge Jiza Page, and not like she supports this, but looking at how we see felony murder and how that disproportionately impacts people of color. So those are things I'm working on.
Thank you. Candidate Lett.
Yeah, so coming from the mental health background and, that direct care lens, working with people out in the community, I agree with Rep. Crawley, and actually have been really inspired by a lot of the work that she's done in this area. But just de-escalation training is so crucial. It's crucial if you work in mental health. It's incredibly crucial for our law enforcement officials to understand and, receive adequate training and be good at it. Because, we've got a rising population of kids with autism, 1 in 51, or it might have even gone down lower than that, children in the United States have autism. So we're going to see a lot of people with disabilities coming of age, people with mental health disorders coming of age. A lot of those people will be, people of color as well. And we have to make sure that our police are trained and ready to police our streets in a way that keeps people safe and doesn't further endanger them. I'm also really interested in learning and working on reforming cash bail. I know for me, having my kiddos that went to jail as a result of, not having access to food and shelter, and then committing crimes to achieve those goals of being safe, they would be incarcerated, and their bail would be so high that they would remain incarcerated until they stood trial. And sometimes that was, a week. Sometimes that was a month or 2 months. And I just really think that we need to revisit how we, do that system and take a good hard look at how we're disenfranchising people with the current model.
Thank you. This is the last question. And literally you all have about 30 seconds to answer this question. Deidre Reese asked a question. If there's one thing we could do to help you in the last 13 days, what could we do to support your candidacy if, one, we already voted for you and or do not live in your district? What's one thing, really quickly? I'll start with you, candidate Lett, and then I'm gonna start backwards. I'm gonna start with candidate Stroud and then go to Representative Crawley and then candidate Lett.
One thing, based on the number of people on this call, since I'm restricted by my judicial canons, I will take this opportunity to say financial support and contribution.
I made mine today.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I would say the same thing. Even though if you voted already, you can still support candidates like myself and others, as well as ask 5 people if they voted already. And if not, let them know the candidates that you support. So financial, and get your people to come out and vote early or at the polls.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'll echo that. We know that when women are able to raise the money, they win. And so we, these last couple of weeks are particularly difficult for campaigns because we've spent a lot of money already. So we, are back to living paycheck to paycheck, if you will. So the end of the road financial support is really, really helpful. And if that's not possible, you can lit drop with us all weekend long. We are out there every day.
Awesome. First of all, before I turn this over, I would be just so remiss if I didn't just say thank you. I know that this is your busy time, having worked on campaigns since I was 9 years old. I know that this is the busy season. And I used to live in your district. I grew up in what is now the 26th district, Representative Crawley, on the south side of Columbus. And I did my first campaign at the age of 9. So I know this is busy season. And so I know that to come on this call is sacrifice, because time is such a precious commodity in the last 13 days of your races. And so thank you from the bottom of the hearts of the Matriots and the members of Delta Sigma Theta Columbus, Ohio Alumni Chapter. I didn't want to turn it over without saying thank you to you all. Remember that there are lots of women candidates up and down the ballot. I really want to encourage you, go to the Matriots site so that you can see who are the endorsed candidates. They have screened these women. They have made sure that they are in alignment with progressive values that really uplift women. And so ultimately, if that matters to you, I would encourage you to go on and see who all of the endorsed candidates are if you've not yet voted, or if you still have some influence on other people who've not yet voted. I would encourage you to go to the Matriots website. I'm so grateful tonight to have been invited as your moderator. I want to thank my president, Deborah Pickens of the Columbus Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, for saying, yes, I could do this on behalf of our chapter. I hope that I did well and that you were pleased. And I'm going to turn it over. There's a good book that reads, where there is no vision, the people perish. Tonight, I'm so humbled to thank the 2 hosts of this event tonight, who are both members of the Matriots and members of Delta Sigma Theta and elected officials, my sorors, my co-chair, Shanette Strickland, and my soror, and both of them are city council members in the city of Reynoldsburg, Ohio. So I'm going to turn this over to Meredith Lawson-Rove, to the Matriots. Thank you so much for having me as your moderator tonight of both panels. Thanks.
Thank you so much, the amazing Tei Street. I knew she wouldn't disappoint. I just appreciate all of your candor and your pleasantries throughout moderating both panels. So publicly, I'd like to thank Shiloh and Jocelyn for their foresight in collaborating these 2 organizations. Thank you so much for contacting SOAR. Excuse me, she's my SOAR. She's also my councilwoman, Strickland, and I, so that we could collaborate and bridge this gap. We know that this is mutually beneficial to both organizations. And I would be remiss, I saw my mother out there, if I don't give my mom, my soror mom, a shout out, Ruth Lawson. So she's not only a member of the best sorority, but she's also a founding member of the Matriots. So you can see I'm trying to be just like her. And so I appreciate all that you've done for me. And President Pickens, thank you so much for allowing us to have this time and you being here. And I want to also just reiterate with our president, what our president said. 97% of our members of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated are registered voters and we're active voters. So we have a long legacy of voting and advocating. And so it just made perfect sense for us to partner with the Matriots, because just as Natasha shared, when women lead, Ohio prospers. And we learned from Jen Miller from the League of Women Voters and Deidre Reese from the Ohio Coalition, the Ohio Unity Coalition, that voting is our power. I like to say it's my superpower. I'm scrolling through, looking at the audience, and none of us are white men. And so if you are not a white man who's a landowner, someone has fought, bled, marched, picketed, were beat and died for us to have this power. So we must do our civic duty and vote. We must get in that good trouble that our beloved congressman shared about. So we know that there's need for poll workers. We know that there's needs for social workers, clergy, poll monitors, and candidate Lett shared that we as women, we must lead by example. And we all know that racism is a public health crisis. And I love what State Rep said. She says she doesn't need any more allies. She needs some co-conspirators. And so I'm out there on the line with her, and I will conspire and conspire and conspire until this is no longer a health crisis. So let me just make sure that we all know the links to our organizations, the Columbus, Ohio, Delta.org. That is the website for the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated Columbus Alumni Chapter. Columbus, Delta.org. The Matriots is matriotsohio.com. LWVOhio.org. That's League of Women Voters. And we also have to give some love to the amazing Tei Street. Amazing T, that's TEI Street.com. So please mark your calendars if you have not already registered for our second of our 2-panel series, which is next week. And it is entitled Why We Serve and How We Can Get Involved. The best Congresswoman in all the land, the incomparable Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, will be our moderator. So, and Congresswoman is not only a member of Columbus Alumni Chapter, but she's also a founding member of the Matriots. So we are just so thrilled and excited that she'll be moderating our panel with us next week. Also, be looking out for a survey from the Matriots. It is a survey for all participants to give us a little feedback on how this evening was. We want to learn what we did well. We want to learn what we can do better. And we are just so thrilled. And I guess I'll just leave you like Russell Simmons. Thank you and good night.